action fans, and thanks for joining us for another edition of All 90s Action All the Time, as we reach the conclusion of our 90s Stallone season. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Murphy, and on today's episode, we are going to be talking about 1997's Copland. And who do I mean by we? Well, of course, I mean my regular co-host. You know who he is. He's a screenwriter. He's 1/3 of the Bloodhound Pigs podcast, and he is a man who would never stand for corruption in his town. It's Mr. Craig Draheim.
I can't hear you, Scott.
But that's not all. As for this episode, we've also got a very special guest in the form of the director of the critically acclaimed A Ghost Waits. It's Mr. Adam Stovall.
Nice to be back, Scott. How you doing?
Good. And you, Adam?
I'm well. I just realized I said nice to be back, but I haven't technically been on this podcast before.
No.
Nice to be here for the first time, Scott.
For listeners who might not be aware, I have another podcast. It's called New Horror Express, and that podcast has a spin-off series, the Guilty Pleasures podcast, and Adam has been on many of them. He's been on 4 editions of that series so far. But nice to have you back, kind of. We all exist in the same universe. It's just, it's all interconnected. This is the Frasier to my podcast. Cheers. I don't know. So, before we break down this one, a little bit of background detail for you. As always, Copland was released on August 15th, 1997. It was written and directed by James Mangold, whose notable credits include Logan, Walk the Line, Girl Interrupted, and a bunch of other stuff. Review-wise, it is currently sitting at 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb, which is a season high, 75% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 63 reviews, 64 on Metacritic based on 21 reviews, and a 3.5 on Letterboxd. Box office-wise, the film made $63.7 million off a $15 million budget, which is pretty decent, but was seen as a disappointment by Miramax, who were looking for another Pulp Fiction-sized hit. Finally, before we get into this, we know...
The idea of this being a Pulp Fiction-esque anything is very funny to me.
That's a fair point. So finally, before we get into this one, yes, we know including this movie on our action podcast is kind of a cheat, and it doesn't really count as an action film. But as friend of my other show, well, we've already mentioned New Horror Express, Abe Goldfarb said, it's an urban western with a shootout at the end, so it does count. So there we go. Abe has laid down the law. It counts, okay? There you go.
If we wanted to start out on a series, or end on a series high instead of...
Well, and also, I mean, if we're going to talk about Stallone in the 90s, I feel like this is a very, essential entry, because they really thought he was going to get an Oscar for this. That was I mean, I remember, I saw this opening night in the theater, and I remember, all of the kind of hubbub around it was his performance, and, him doing a capital A acting job, and, now we're going to get, Stallone's finally going to get his Oscar, which was a deeply weird thing to hear at the end of the 90s, when it's really? Cobra needs an Oscar? What? There was a lot of years between Rocky and this, let me tell you. 20 to be exact, actually.
Well, and what we've seen with this season is it's definitely him, at least up until this, it's been him trying to break away from, I know Scott's mentioned it a lot in the previous episodes, the one-man army, but then they kind of divert back to him still being the one-man army, or the hero at the end.
Yeah.
So it's him trying to show range, but then ultimately not, where then with this one, I don't know, it works.
He is the deeply American ideal of a good guy with a gun. Yeah.
Yeah. And James Mangold's obviously a big fan of Westerns. Mm-hmm. It's all of his influences on this movie, as well as cop dramas, is westerns. I mean, he even said in an interview himself, kind of looking back on the movie, he says it's a western movie template onto what you might call a 1970s Sidney Lumet film. So essentially, it's like Sheen mixed with Serpico is what he's made.
Well, and like, I mean, I try to never watch a movie with like a movie with a modern perspective from like many years ago, but like watching this, it's totally ACAB the movie. It's just like all cops are bastards, the film. It's just like, all right, this is interesting.
Yeah, pretty much.
Reluctant to go too far into that ideal before we even start talking about the plot. So, but it's an interesting movie because like it really does view the police as inevitable, you know, as opposed to just like a thing that happened, and like a decision that we make socially or culture wise. Like it is just like, well, there have to be police, despite like the premise of the film. Like they like all these cops move into a town and then have to have a police department that they absolutely do not want policing them. Like, this is interesting. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, apparently this there's a kind of autobiographical element to this because like Mangold grew up in a town in the Hudson Valley that it was kind of like this. It had lots of kind of cops in it and stuff like that. Not living in New York, like one of the 5 boroughs anyway.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely, and I'll say the secret phrase that we talked about a little bit before recording, but it's one that feels, because and I know we'll get into it more since there's so many ideas and so many
I've just realized what you mean by the secret phrase as fine.
Since there's so many ideas and so many kind of plots that then go nowhere, it feels so much like it should either be, I don't know, there should be more to it. Like it's trying to cram a lot into, or create this whole community within, well, the version that we watched, an hour and 40.
Hour and 44. Yeah. So like we all watched the theatrical cut of the movie. There is a director's cut of the movie that is like 116 minutes. So it's like 12 minutes longer.
Yeah.
Well, and like how much of that is just like a triumph of casting? Because, would we care as much about Rose were she not played by Kathy Moriarty?
No.
Robert De Niro's character does not need to be in this movie at all, but it's Robert De Niro, so it's like, oh, it's one of the biggest characters. And it's like, but he doesn't actually do anything.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of like, there's, I suppose each director has like their own talents of like, like Tarantino is good at all that kind of flashiness and like certain, and is that kind of crisp dialogue and all that kind of stuff. And I think like one of Mangold's key talents is like working with actors. Cause I think like often his movies, there's certain directors that the look of the movie is what you remember the most, or or directors who write their own material and it's the dialogue you remember the most, or whatever it is, or the way it's kind of cut together, or but like most of Mangold's movies, I feel like the thing you remember is like a particular performance in the movie. Like Girl Interrupted has like one of Angelina Jolie's best performances, and Logan has one of Hugh Jackman's best performances. And like they're kind of most of his films seem to be kind of actors' films.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know from the director's cut, I probably haven't seen it in a year or whatever, but it feels a little more like there's more of a build to it. I remember. I felt like De Niro pops up a few more times. I think there's the relationship between Harvey Keitel and Stallone is established a little bit better. And there's little kind of, it's not even scenes necessarily, but I think there's a dialogue that, kind of really explains them a little bit more. Even within that opening bar scene where the bomb squad woman keeps looking at Freddy, which is Stallone. There's a whole interaction between him and then, Figgy, or Ray Liotta, is kind of explaining him and saying, he has a bum ear, he's good people, stuff like that.
just sticking with Mangold for a second, like, I remember watching Walk the Line, again, opening weekend in the theater, and it was one of the first times I really, like, from the moment the movie starts, it's like, oh, this is what it looks like when somebody's trying to win an Oscar. Like, and not even, I don't even mean Joaquin. I mean, like, Mangold, like, the movie begins with this, like, you know, sliding, establishing shot of prison, you know, and it's just like, there's this kind of sense of grandeur about it. They're like, oh, we're telling this huge story, and there's all this wind up to, like, the reveal of Johnny Cash. I was like, oh, like, this guy, like, definitely was like, I'm gonna win an Oscar doing this.
There is certain movies that you watch that are like, that are so, it's so signposted that they've been made to try to win Oscars. There's, particularly in the early to mid 2000s, I think there's some, like, really bad offenders of that. Like, A Beautiful Mind and Crash and things like that. They're just like, oh, you were trying so hard to impress the Academy.
Akiva Goldsman winning an Oscar for A Beautiful Mind is one of those moments when I got so viscerally angry at the idea of awards for art, because it's like, the man who is responsible for Batman Forever and the thought process, a puzzle's an enigma, Edward Nigma. That's who the Riddler is. It's like, he has an Oscar. Like, none of this shit makes sense. This isn't a meritocracy.
And, like, yeah, so, like, we probably should get into the plot of this movie very soon. But just one last point on that. Batman Forever, both a more entertaining movie, and I'm going to say it, better movie than A Beautiful Mind.
I mean, yeah, I can't fault that. Beautiful Mind, shit. Like, Batman Forever, I had that poster on my wall, A, because huge nerd for comic books, and B, Nicole Kidman is inhumanly gorgeous. And I just, like, yeah, and we got the Seal song. That was a good time. Tommy Lee Jones is, like, having the most fun he's ever had on camera.
He has a lot of fun in Under Siege. It's very close.
Oh, yeah.
And
he was even in it, yeah.
What, there was all the McDonald's or Burger King had the special cups or something too with Batman Forever. That was when they were pushing all that stuff.
Absurd.
Later on in the year, we're going to do a Batman Forever episode, so, like, we should maybe hold fire on some of this. You know, like, this is good Batman Forever content. But anyway,
I'm coming back for that. Shit. I got thoughts on Batman Forever.
Okay. Right. Let's start with this movie. So, like, talking about the kind of director's cut and things that James Mangold wanted, didn't want, the opening narration by De Niro's character, Mo, that he didn't want that. He thought, like, the movie kind of explained itself of, like, these communities and how these communities got started, and this idea of white flight that, you know, he would be in parts by the movie, but like, the Weinsteins were like, no, we need this to explain to the audience, this opening narration that explains how the town of Garrison kind of got set up, and then gives us a little bit of background on Stallone. And apparently, in the director's cut, the narration that talks about Stallone's sheriff character isn't in the director's cut.
Yeah, so it does the opening part where it just says about the city, but then what I was talking about before, when you're seeing in the bar with him playing pinball, his character is explained by Figgy to the other officer. So that dialogue, so yeah, instead of it being a narration, it's, I guess, exposition, or, you know, explain through that.
And then, so we kind of already discussed, like, what happens after the narration in terms of, like, yeah, there's this scene, it's like, and as we normally it's an interesting scene, I suppose, because as we normally introduce, like, Stallone characters, we normally get a hero shot, and this is like I don't want to call it an anti-hero shot, because he's not an like an un-hero shot, I suppose, cause he's kind of slumped half drunkenly over a pinball machine, losing at pinball, and you know, it's not how you expect to see Stallone introduced in the movie.
Art.
You're fucking right, it is.
Which is what I just imagine James Mangold yelling after every take. It's art. Moving on.
Apparently, he initially offered this role to Gary Sinise, but Gary Sinise said it wasn't sexy enough, which is weird. I don't know. Like, I read that as a quote. I was like, did Gary Sinise really say that? That seems like a weird thing to say. I don't know. But I don't know. Sorry, that's a quote by Mangold. I don't know.
I'm just imagining, like, hey, I was just Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Maybe that is true, though. Maybe it's just like, I just spent a lot of time as that guy. Like, I need to go 180 degrees.
Yeah. I gotta be sexy, Gary Sinise.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. Like, I was just thinking, like, what if like Philip Seymour Hoffman was Freddie Heflin? Like, what if, a character actor as opposed to an action star?
So watching it this time, I agree completely with it. I was like, I think Stallone is fine in the role, but I felt like it really fit more with, Hoffman or somebody of that caliber.
It's hard not to be metatextual about this movie. Yeah. It's like it's so 90s, and just like, I know, like Annabelle Sciorra, like opening the door, and I'd forgotten she was in it, and I was just like, oh man, I miss you. Like, and then of course you start thinking about how her career was ruined by Harvey Weinstein, and like the moment that she just had with like Me Too and everything, it's just like, oh yeah, now I'm sad. And I'm watching a movie about police who I do not care for. And so just like, this is just a litany of issues. But and Stallone, like, I don't know. I mean, he does a really good job, but he's never not Stallone.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like somebody that should have been knocked, because he's supposed to be the local hero or whatever, but it definitely, he still is buffed up and everything. You expect somebody that like has kind of really let themselves go or something. Because that's how the character's almost written.
I think this is one of the interesting things. So a lot of the reviews of the time, like, mention a lot about like this weight gain and how like kind of fat and schlubby he is. And it's kind of, and he did, I mean, he went all out, like, he does tone himself down. He did, gain 40 pounds for the role, but he doesn't look, he just looks kind of like normal dad bods kind of, it's not like he's like, oh my God, he's gained so much weight. He's, or, I don't know, like, they kind of, a lot of the reviewers at the time seemed to treat it as if he'd like ballooned. He was like fucking, like Fat Elvis or something. And you're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like when they talk about like, oh, such and such actress, like really like abandoned vanity. And actually I was thinking about this the other night. I was watching, the Woman in the Window, and Amy Adams, like, doesn't wear makeup, and her character has acne and is much plainer, but it's also Amy Adams, who's a beautiful woman. And so it's just like, oh, abandons vanity. It's like, we're not like Charlize Theron, who's just like, you're gonna have to put a lot of prosthetics on me. Please make me, not look like myself. It's like, there's still this kind of retention of star persona.
Yeah.
It really does,
but I don't know, like, the thing about it is, like, I'm going to push back a little bit on, like, Stallone casting, like, Philip Seymour Hoffman or something like that. I don't know if Philip Seymour Hoffman kind of works. Like, I think, like, that's too much of a character actor. I mean, this, like, like, there's a cop drama element of the movie, which we're going to talk about very soon. We are positive about this. But like, like the Freddy part of the movie, the Stallone part of the movie is a Western. He's supposed to be like, he's kind of like Gary Cooper or something, like, and I don't see Philip Seymour Hoffman as Gary Cooper.
No, I think Craig made a really interesting point about that. Like, the fact that Freddy is this, like, local hero. Like, this is a perfect role for a B movie star. Somebody who never had the, like, global phenomenon success of a Stallone or a Schwarzenegger or anything like that. Like, imagine, like, remaking it today with Casper Van Dien. Just somebody's like, oh yeah, where'd that guy go?
I get that, and I agree with that, and I'm not trying to say
that I don't think Stallone is bad in it. I'm not trying to like push that. I don't think he's bad. I I'm not convinced that he's the best choice.
Well, Mangold wasn't convinced either, to be fair. Like, genuinely, a lot of people were pushed on him. Miramax wanted a starry cast. He wanted a less starry cast, because he thought the kind of having a starry cast kind of detracted from the story of the movie and, the story he wanted to tell. And they thought it would resonate more with a kind of more, not the kind of top tier stars, but a more kind of, middling cast that are kind of, names that names and faces you might have heard of. Yeah. But not necessarily kind of like, holy fuck, it's Stallone and De Niro and Ray Liotta and, Harvey Keitel and all these kind of big Hollywood names.
Yeah. Going off of what Adam was saying and then even talking about what we were discussing prior with Tarantino, it feels, I agree with Adam in that sense that like Tarantino did with Travolta, where Travolta's career had pretty much gone, and then he cast him in, in Pulp Fiction, and it kind of boosted his career back up and all of that. I feel like, that would have been almost a better choice. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, every movie, there's a million different movies it could have been.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the peril of like forensic analysis of a film is just like, well, and if this had happened, it's like, every decision, could have gone a different way.
Well, I mean, like, I do feel like that Mangold maybe still feels slightly sore about it. In that, like, in kind of some of the retrospective interviews I've read, even though he heavily compliments Stallone's performance in the movie, he does see it as something that affected both reviews and box office. In that, like a lot of Stallone action fans came to the movie thinking like, oh, it's going to be like Cobra or something, and were disappointed. And then lots of kind of art house crowds kind of stayed away from it because they were like, oh, this is just like some sort of ploy for Stallone to get an Oscar or whatever, and we're dead sniffy about it. So like it kind of split the audience, and it's kind of grown in reputation over the years, and like I think it's now more well regarded than it was when it first came out, because it did get a lot of, it got decent reviews, like solid reviews, but like lots of middling reviews. And, it kind of, like I said, like when I was reading out the numbers, it's not like it was a box office flop. It's still made multiple times the budget, but like obviously it wasn't the kind of hit that either the studio or Mangold or Stallone wanted, because obviously Stallone retreated back into doing action. He saw it as a kind of failed experiment. And,
Hey Scott, what's the movie about?
What is the movie about? Jesus Christ. Yes. Our audience are on tenterhooks being like, just talk about it. Like,
this sounds amazing. What happened?
We talked for 3 hours about the making of another movie based on this movie, but they didn't talk about the movie itself. But now we're going to, don't worry, we're going to talk about the movie, right? So, we've had Freddy's intro, then we get introduced to Murray, or his nickname is Superboy. He's at a bachelor party. He's over the bachelor party. He's like, I've had enough of this. He goes out to his car, and then we're introduced to Robert Patrick's character as well, Jack, sporting a beautiful mustache, and he's puking his guts up. It's kind of set up, is there something going on? Is Murray about to get attacked in the dark or whatever? But no, that's not what happens. It's just two cops kind of like, one cop's puking, one cop's taking care of him. And, that's that. And then, Superboy, he drives off in the car, and like, because everybody in this, movie is a name of some sort, Superboy is played by Michael Rappaport, who, anyway, I won't talk too much about Michael Rappaport.
I mean, we'll have lots of chances. He's in this movie a bit.
Yeah. That's a fair point. So he drives off, and then he gets into, like, basically, a car drives into his car, and two black youths are in the car, and one of them points what is a tire iron at him, but he thinks it's a gun. His at the same time as the tire iron is pointed at him, his tire goes out because of some glass, but he thinks it's because it's been shot, and then he just goes bananas and just shoots up that car, like
fires blindly into the car. Just New York's finest.
Yeah. Just not even looking at the car. He just like points his arm out the window, out his car window, and just like bang, 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 just spraying bullets aimlessly.
Well, even that scene before when he meets or when we're introduced to Jack and everything, you kind of get the sense that he is a little, well, that he's not trigger happy, but he's
a Michael Rappaport character.
Yeah, that he's not the calmest with handling, his firearm, because he instantly grabs the gun when he hears, some noise, and
it's not really a stretch for Rappaport, is it?
Yeah, he's the kid. It's interesting that you're like already calling him Superboy, which I was just thinking, like, do they call him that before it, or is it part of the like story that like, these guys, these like ruffians were out and he heroically, shot up their car and stopped them. But no, it is. It's all cops are bastards. Like he just, he doesn't have the right information and decides to just fire upon civilians. And that is, I don't know. I like that it is immediately just like, you've got the cops that are at this party and are clearly like, Jack shows up to the scene and it's like, he was just vomiting from being, like, he's still drunk, and like plants the weapon and like all that stuff. You're just like, so everyone's terrible. Okay. Like, I'm with it. I agree.
Well, the big argument within it amongst themselves are just like, you're going to be fine. Remember, you saved, 6 or 7 black babies. Remember, they're
6
black babies, and they make sure to keep saying they were black babies. That's what you saved. It wasn't just any old babies. So you're not a racist cop.
Right.
Yeah. That's right. That's how that works. It's a bit like, like meet my what and black friend argument, I can't be racist. But like throughout this episode, we are going to have to talk about the cast of this movie, because like even small roles are played by, actors that even if you do not know the name, you definitely know the face. And so Robert Patrick's character, Jack, he plants the evidence, and he is called out on this by a medic who appears in all of 2 scenes, and he is played by Paul Calderon, which Oh, dear. Anyway, tell us what else is happening in the plot, Craig.
Okay, and so during this the fight between the EMT and Jack and everybody, and they're trying to break it up, it's basically that Superboy, potentially, we'll see later, depending on what's going to happen in the plot, but he jumped off the George Washington Bridge, is what is being told, after his uncle, played by Harvey Keitel, came up and was trying to sort everything out, and they're saying constantly to him, you're going to ruin everything your uncle built, and really laying on all of the guilt, which
is fascinating. Like, cause I'm sure he's a little drunk as well, but like, he's aware of what just happened. He just murdered 2 people, because, and like, he thought that the tire iron was a gun, and, it was probably still like, but I think there was, and then they say like, there's no weapon, so he's kind of reckoning with like, oh, I just like did the worst thing I could do. And they're all just like, no, you're gonna be fine. Like, you could either be the thing that takes down all of our lives, or if we imagine a set of black babies that you have saved, you just saved 6 imaginary black babies. So, like, let's go with that. Let's not let the truth get in the way. And and we really don't get into that at all. Like, Rappaport's kind of, to be or not to being off to the side, and we don't even see him jump. It's just which obvious for reasons that become obvious later on, but it's like, it's just cops lying to themselves. Just like, oh no, he totally just jumped. What are we gonna do now?
And that's how the delivery is given to us.
Yeah, it really is. I think they seem to be like creating theater for the amusement stroke ire of the paramedics. That's really all that they're doing there.
who they did.
Who was Paul Calderon gonna believe? Harvey Keitel or his lion eyes?
Yeah.
Do you know what though? I definitely have to say, right? You know how we've talked briefly about how this movie kind of sets up subplots and then
we've never talked briefly.
No, we've never talked briefly. That is well called out, Adam. I will try to be as succinct as possible about this point I'm just about to make right now.
Bah.
So, did you think that if you had just watched this movie for the first time, would you assume that Paul Calderon's medic, Hector, was going to be an actual character in this movie? Like,
yes,
just from this setup.
Of
because
course.
literally, he is in this scene, and then he is in the scene where the cops are being interrogated by internal affairs, like complaining about how this is all bullshit, and then he is never seen again.
Yeah, he's literally the inciting incident.
Yeah, and then, well, we'll get into other characters, but my big issue too is Janine Garofalo. Like every time I watch this movie, I'm like, why? She seems like she's such an important part, and then she's just kind of thrown away randomly. And that's how, it is for so many actors that it ends up becoming just Stallone's movie by the end, which we've seen in so many throughout this season. Like they set up all this stuff, and then Stallone's ego or something.
Which is also feeds the metatextual reading of like Janine Garofalo's character just being like, you know what? I'm out of here. Yeah. Like, I don't believe in what's happening. I'm not doing anything important. I'm leaving. Just like, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, that is true. She just walks out the movie later on, which we'll discuss this when it comes up as well. I do want to mention as well, though. So when we get to the internal affairs interrogations,
yes,
I noted the weirdest connection that the films we've talked about in this season has. So one of the interrogating officers, the one that's not De Niro, is a character called Detective Carson. Now, Detective Carson is played by Malik Yoba. Now, Malik Yoba starred in Cool Runnings as Yul Brynner. And this is the second time we have come across a cast member from Cool Runnings, because Leon was in Cliffhanger. So there we go. It's a weird pub trivia fact for you.
It all goes back to Cool Runnings.
Yeah. Yes, this season has somehow it's just all been about Cool Runnings in the end.
That's gonna become the game of this podcast. It's like, okay, but what's the Cool Runnings, association?
We're gonna start doing 6 Degrees, where it's like
6 Degrees of Cool Runnings. Yeah,
Stallone played in a movie with blah blah blah, who played in with John Candy, so that's Cool Runnings. There we go.
Yeah.
Bing, 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 bing! You just won $100. Anyway, moving on with the plot. Like, this is, like, we have those interrogations, like, they don't kind of lead anywhere. The cop that's being interrogated doesn't turn up in the film again. And he seems like he's going to be a character too, but no. And that's that. And then we move on and we get introduced to Garofalo's character, Cindy.
Mm-hmm. And, well, the cop being interrogated is the only kind of black regular police officer. And so they really push that kind of element on them about, well, are you even going to see Garrison, while these white people, are all these white cops, do they even care about you? So it makes it seem like he's going to have a kind of conflict, a moral conflict, but yeah. That's it.
Yeah, and then we are introduced to Janine Garofalo doing her job.
Yeah. Yeah. In a school zone of 25 miles an hour, everybody's going like 50, and and Freddy is just letting it happen.
Yeah, this is what I was saying before. Like they set up this Copland town, and then because they're cops, they're like, well, we have to have a police force, because what is society without police force? But then they do not want the police force to enforce any laws. They're like, no, we're cops. We're all on the same side. Like, I should be able to drive 70 in a school zone. And if a kid gets hit, well, they shouldn't have been there.
I'm Harvey Keitel, goddammit.
Yeah. Have you seen my penis? It's the 90s. You definitely have.
This is not the Bad Lieutenant episode, Adam. This is the Copland episode. But as you kind of mentioned, Craig, this is kind of the problem with like Cindy's character of like Keitel as Ray is like patronizing as fuck to her. So is Robert Patrick's character Jack, and it feels like there's something going to be done about that in terms of like, oh, at the start of the movie, Freddy just lets it slide and lets everybody be patronizing to her, and it doesn't question it. He's just being chicken shit. And then you think like, oh, there's going to be a part later on where he'll stick up for her, or she'll just stick up for herself and have like a badass moment or something, and it just never arrives.
Yeah.
You think something's going to happen, and then it doesn't. Welcome to Copland.
Yeah. All of us are just waiting for that final showdown where it's in silence. That's what it's all about.
That is a great scene, which we'll obviously talk about sometime within the next 3 hours.
Oh boy.
And so, well, after...
Oh, but this is also where we see that Michael Rappaport has not jumped to his death.
Yep.
That is true.
He's in the back seat. Yeah.
And Freddy sees it too, but obviously he's not going to say anything.
Right. Living in New York, it does make me like, wait a second, are we just faking deaths willy-nilly? Like, is that what's happening here? Like, he's dead. This is also like such a pre-internet movie where it's like, oh yeah, you just can't do that. Like, you can't, like people would know very quickly.
Yeah, that's true. But thankfully, that is not an issue that this movie has to deal with being made in 1997.
Nary a cell phone to be found.
It does. The weird thing is, like, just thinking about the going back to the box office thing about like Miramax and thinking, oh, this is going to be like a big hit. Like they really kind of kneecapped it by releasing it in August. This is like an October-November movie. Like it's the wrong time of year to release this film.
Right. I mean, that's what staggering arrogance gets you is, well, we're Miramax. We're geniuses. We're great at this. We're living gods. We can do what we want. We can put this out in August because fuck you, why not? This was like the height, of his powers. 1998 sure. Is Shakespeare in Love. Like, Harvey, like, if Harvey said that the sky was green, like, you were going to get 3 movies within a week telling you that the sky was green. And people were just like, oh yeah, no, he's just right. So, they were feeling themselves and they made a lot of decisions that, were certainly decisions.
Indeed. Yeah, I suppose you're right, Adam. This was kind of at the height of his megalomaniacal powers, Yeah. What a dick.
There's so few good things. I mean, again, like the reading of this movie is just like, there's so many like awful people associated with it and even in it, and the subject matter is about something that we've like completely reoriented our understanding of. It's an odd movie to be discussing in 2021. Because it's so 1997.
Yeah. It kind of touches on the nerve of like a lot of things that are obviously happening in your guys' country. The Black Lives Matter movement and police corruption and the kind of defund the police kind of movement. All that kind of stuff. But
it just doesn't push as far as I think it should have to be, because what we talked about prior of like him making a movie that's like truly a great movie, and I think that's where it falls. Like it's trying to be safe in its sentiment, but without, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff they could really just touch on, especially in the night. I mean, more so now, based on everything that's happening, but especially in the 90s because you had all the LA riots.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff as well.
It would. I don't generally think about remakes, but it would be an interesting film to remake with how different we are and how greatly our understanding has shifted of all these things.
Yeah. I think this is I honestly think this is a really good movie that could have been a masterpiece if it was more incisive in its attack in certain subject matters that it's covering, and it kind of glosses over a bunch of stuff, and it never goes as deep and as hard as you would like on a lot of these topics.
Yeah.
And that's the Oscar element. You don't want to push it too hard because then you can't get the Oscar.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Anyway, we'll cut back to the plot. Plot-wise, we're now going to have De Niro and Keitel have an act off.
Yep. Which, this was another kind of like this was a big one because it was the first time they were on screen together since
Mean Streets, I think.
Or Taxi Driver.
Oh yeah, Taxi Driver, of course.
Yeah, and so that was, of course, that was how the hype of it was. Like, De Niro and Keitel are back again. And they're at odds again.
These guys just can't get along.
I like it, how Mo is describing the town of Garrison, and like Keitel's line of like, "What are we, fucking Amish?" Really cracks me up.
I agree that Mo is not really that crucial. I mean, De Niro is great, but there are some great lines that he has. They're some of my favorites throughout, especially with the go to lunch element. Where the guy has the sandwich in his hand and he's like, "But I'm eating." He's like, "Go to lunch, go fucking lunch." And he's yelling at all of them.
I did have a moment of like, is this what that's from? Like, no, it's Glengarry Glen Ross. Like, oh my God. But again, very tired last night. I was just like, wait a second. I don't feel like Copland has that much of a legacy in the culture. No, Mo is a very funny character to me because he does, like, it's so just, let's get De Niro. But like, if, like William H. Macy was playing the role. I love that, like, he's just like, okay, Freddy, we gotta get you in on this. And Freddy's like, oh, I don't know. And then 5 minutes later, Freddy's like, okay, I think I want to help. And he's like, too late. I've moved on to something else. And it's like, isn't this literally your job? No. What do you mean you've moved on?
And then after he leaves, he says the whole thing of like, if that cupcake makes a mess, then we got a case again.
Because you got to remember, we'll now kind of skip over that scene because we've discussed later on in the movie. This happens where the mayor calls him off the case, and that's why he reacts like that.
Yeah. Sorry, I am really bad at like linear recounting. I want to just jump around.
That's fine.
And that's why I'm not the host. You are, Scott. What does happen next?
Well, actually, so talking about this kind of movie kind of glossing over stuff, there's kind of a couple of scenes that happen after that. Fred meets Mo very briefly because Mo thinks he's giving him a ticket, and then Mo's kind of sounding him out, and then Fred, like, there's kind of non-scene of, like, kind of filler scene of, like, just to introduce the fact that Fred is in love with this character of Liz, who is the character who he saved from drowning, and that's how he lost his hearing in one ear. And then and then there's a kind of neighbor dispute, and this is where we find out about an affair that is happening, because there's this character of Rose who plays Ray's wife, and it's not much of a character, but the fact, Kathy Moriarty's playing it, so we're kind of interested in the character. She's very good in the role, even though she turns up in like 3 or 4 scenes.
Yeah.
She's there to kind of move some elements of the plot forward, like with Superboy, but that's, she's really non-existent except as to move a prop.
I mean, like, this movie's MO seems to really be like, has this actor worked with Scorsese?
Also, like, speaking of Liz, it so threw me that Sylvester Stallone and Annabelle Sciorra are apparently supposed to be the same age. I'm like, yes. Yeah, she's 15 years younger than him. Like, what are you talking about?
Yes. Stallone born in 1946. Annabelle Sciorra born in 1960. So yes, the 14 years difference there. But yes, in this movie, it is very funny. They're the exact same age.
It's been a regular ongoing thing in the Stallone season.
Oh yeah, it definitely has. Oh, I think this is funny anytime this happens in a movie. I remember, when Hobbs and Shaw came out, and Hobbs and Shaw tried to convince us that Jason Statham and Vanessa Kirby were brother and sister, which would be fine if they were like different mothers or something like that, or if it was explained. No, there's an actual flashback of them being roughly the same age, and you're like, that's ridiculous.
I just actually clicked because, like I have IMDb up, so I have learned to like have it up so I can check things while I'm talking. And Harvey Keitel, born 1939, Kathy Moriarty, born 1960, and like again presented as same age. Yeah. I mean, we could get into the double standard of age in Hollywood, but let's not. Because this is a 4-hour podcast.
Absolutely. That is absolutely true. But yes, Annabella Sciorra, Stallone, Peter Berg, they all went to high school together.
Yep. Peter Berg, who looks like a fetus in this movie.
Peter Berg is even younger than Annabella Sciorra. He was born in 1964. So, like, I mean, the age of this movie is insane. But
well, I don't know. And that pops up even in the reverse because there's a point where Ray Liotta is telling Peter Berg that like basically how old he is. You know, I was doing all this stuff while you were still sucking on your mother's teat. Like, well, they can't be that. I should check their age, but I feel like they aren't that. Their age isn't that different.
Liotta born in 1954.
Okay.
So 10 years. He's 10 years older.
Okay.
It's a tenuous grasp on, you know. It shares my feelings on linearity, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because then, like, it suggested that Figgis is like Stallone's best friend, so did they not all go to high school together? I don't understand. It's fine. We can't go too far down this rabbit hole. We've gone down enough rabbit holes already. Yeah. We need to reel this back in. We need to talk about plot or something.
So Freddy brings a stuffed turtle that fell off of Liz's car that was her daughter's back to her house, and she thanks him for it, and it kind of shows there the kind that he aches for in a way, but then that's where it goes, where they're asking about, or that's, she brings up the garbage bags, about that there's one garbage bag that isn't hers that somebody keeps leaving there.
Yeah, and that's how we get the interrogation of Rose, who snaps back that maybe if Joey doesn't like my garbage, then he can stop soiling my sheets. And it's like, oh, right, there's some sort of affair going on here. I wonder if we'll get more of that. Not really.
Nope.
Actually, talking about this film kind of glossing over things, there is a scene just after this where Fred's deputy Bill, who is played by Noah Emmerich, who would later go on to be kind of more famous for The Americans, starring in that show. But he's just like, while like Stone is like sitting in his car, like having like a brief flashback, he's just harassing a black couple, and it's kind of not commented on. Like, not commenting at all, and then the black couple, like, drive by Stallone and kind of shout some abuse at him and being like, well, basically, we're not coming back to this time, fuck you guys. And it's just like, well, that was we're moving on from that. Yeah, like, apparently Deputy Bill's a bit of a racist, and we don't discuss it at all.
Well, now I'm thinking about like Craig's thing about the Fargo series of like making Copland a series. I'm like, yo, do I get an episode about the Garrison Tourism Bureau? Like, why anyone would come to this town for any reason ever?
Well, there's even that whole section where Jack talks about it's not where they're patronizing Janine Garofalo, where they're saying it's not the locals you need to worry about, honey, or something like that. It's the outsiders, and they hint at people of color. Again, it's like all these subtexts are hinted at, but then just never investigate more. It's like, that's it. Like after that scene with the couple yelling at him, then it kind of just goes away. It's no longer a thing.
Yeah.
It's not a good script. Like, there's so much else to recommend about this movie, but like, it's really not a good script. It could have used more. It needed another draft. It needed it's kind of a lazy script, but it is an absolute like triumph of casting and department heads. That like it is, it's a well regarded ish film. But yeah, the script is a bit lazy.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
What happens next?
Well, we've kind of covered what happens next a little bit, because we get the introduction of Joey, and that's where, like, Figgis, Ray Liotta's character is saying, like, oh, I've been doing this since you were a kid, or whatever, talking about that. But, like, it is a pretty entertaining scene, because, like, Ray Liotta throughout this movie is acting his fucking socks off. Yeah. He's a very convincing cokehead, I'll tell you that. And he is, again, like, this is one of the many act-offs in the movie. So, like, Liotta's going at it toe-to-toe with Robert Patrick, and they're having an act-off. And then, like, he just starts, like, just fucking jack up, Robert Patrick's character. And then he does, like, the weirdest thing, where he takes a dart out of a dartboard, and then he sticks it up Jack's nose, and then he's just, like, dragging him around the bar with this dart up his nose, which is just a surreal, it's just a really fun, it cracks me up for some reason.
Well, yeah, and then he decides to act off against Harvey Keitel, Ray, in it too, after he, like, drops him to the ground. Then there's the kind of him yelling at
Tell him why you can't look me in the eyes. Tell him why you can't look at me.
And he has one of my favorite lines in this, besides the going to lunch, where we'll get into it. Never mind. I don't want to jump around too much. I'll wait until we actually get to it.
What are you trying to say?
Oh.
No. What are you trying to say there's something wrong with jumping around? What's going on here?
Just when he's driving his car at the end.
Yeah.
What the fuck are you looking at? Whatever.
I love it so much. Ray Liotta's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ray Liotta is great in this. He really is. Ah, dear. I just remembered that, like, in that, like, opening bit on the bridge where the plot all kicks off, like, one of the cops is also played by John Spencer, who doesn't have much of a role, but his character in this is called Leo, and he would go on to become much more famous for playing another Leo in a couple of years from this in The West Wing.
Yeah.
The cast of this is nuts.
It really is. I mean, it's so Frank Vincent showing up for, like, a scene, and, like, having, like, 2 lines. You're just like, Frank Vincent's just an interesting actor. Like, I just want to follow everybody. Despite the fact that when we do follow the characters, it doesn't really go anywhere. All right, well, yeah.
Do you know there is a scene that was cut from the movie? I don't know, like, what part she played, or, like, what element she had to do with the plot or whatever, but apparently Debbie Harry had a cameo in this, but it was cut out the movie, and I'm just like, you're just adding people for the sake of it.
Yeah, I looked at watching it this time, I was looking at the IMDb and everything, and again, I've seen it a bunch, but I saw her name pop up, and it was one of the first kind of names billed. Like, wait, I've seen this movie so many times, and I love Blondie. I know Debbie Harry's not in this film.
Oh my god, I had no idea. Now I'm like, it's like, she's on the IMDb. Like, now I'm gonna need a, Ryan Murphy-esque miniseries about the making of Copland.
Yeah.
And I can't stand Ryan Murphy miniseries, but oh my god, this is fascinating. I think I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole of Copland after this.
Yeah, researching this took a long time, because I just kept going down IMDb rabbit holes. It was much like this podcast keeps going down the same routes.
Yeah. The silence earlier, like when we were talking about Ray Liotta, was the sound of me not talking about something wild. Just like, oh god, I want to talk about how amazing Ray Liotta is. We do not have time for that.
So next up, is that one, don't we move to the party, or is it, because I know it changes from director's cut to theatrical. Is it when
basically no, like, we now move on, like, Freddy goes over to Liz's house.
Yes,
there's a bit of a domestic, and then, like, after that, he, like, he goes back home, he's napping on the couch, and we get more of that flashback of, like, when
what actually
when Freddy saved Liz. Yeah, like what actually happened when that car went off the bridge, and yeah.
Isn't that the scene? Yeah, when like the domestic thing, when like Peter Berg is outside with like blood running down his face, and he's like, everything's fine, and then she opens the door for Stallone, and Peter Berg kicks it open, and Laura storms in. Like, shouldn't he die at the end of this movie? It's like, given that scene, like, shouldn't Peter Berg dead at some point, like, or face some consequences? Yeah.
Well, and then even I mean,
he does. I mean, we'll discuss it later.
But then, even when he does die, it makes it feel like he doesn't deserve it in a weird, like they try and make him out to be just another victim of Ray's, but based on all the stuff we've seen of him prior, you're kind of I don't know.
I guess it is like, it's indicative of how, like, while Mangold is telling a morality play in a world of police, he's like genuinely inherently on the police's side.
Yeah.
So even though they're terrible people doing terrible things, it's still just like, but like, cops have a hard job and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you gotta blow off steam, and I hate it so much. Anyway, moving on.
Moving on. Now, this is where Figgis' house is set on fire.
Yes.
Like, his house is on fire, and we are led to assume, since we had just not long seen him drag Jack around with a dart up his nose, that Jack was ordered to do this by Ray.
And it's another one of those plot sections that seem like it's a huge thing and could be a whole movie basically in itself, but then for some reason it's just in there and feels kind of useless. But yeah,
it's kind of interesting. Like, I'm writing the script that will probably be our next movie, and my current like chief worry is that I'm doing too much. Like there's a sequence that, like, when I tell people the story, I get to the sequence and I could, like, there's not always, but sometimes you kind of see in their eyes, like, okay, this is a lot. And so there is that concern when you're writing a script of just like, am I doing too much? Because, if you do too much, then the ability to emotionally connect with the really important stuff gets lost because, well, is it all important? And this is a really fascinating case study of just like, there's a bunch of really cool ideas and it's interesting, but if you can't really dig into any one of them, then what was the...
Yeah, true.
But Figgis' wife dies in the process too. She burns to death.
Monica, we hardly knew ye.
Yeah.
That is absolutely true, because she is just introduced as that kind of, totally burnt near corpse.
Yeah.
Right. Introduced as a corpse is a really good... That feels like it should be the title of a book about acting in like Law and Order shows or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then, I mean, after that, we cut to like the fake funeral of Superboy,
which everyone there knows is fake. Like, they're all just like, oh, it's a suit. Like, they're laughing about it. Like, oh my god, such terrible people.
Again, just theater for their own sake, apparently.
Yeah. Like, why are you all there then? Like, there's no press.
But
so is it traditional to play bagpipes at a policeman's funeral? Is that?
I think so.
Is that a thing? Like, because I was like, being Scottish, I was like, oh, they're just playing bagpipes for some reason. Oh, cool.
It's a cop movie thing.
Well, clearly Michael Rappaport is Irish.
Yeah.
He's definitely not Italian. Murray Babbage. Babbage. Such an Irish Scottish name.
Well,
I come across Babbages all the time.
Well, we get this whole thing too, where it kind of shows Ray helping out Freddy, where he meets up with I forgot, is it the mayor? Or it's not
No, so this is where Frank Vincent turns up.
Yes,
he is the president of like kind of the police union or something.
Yeah.
And then basically he's like, I can fix you up, and then doesn't appear again.
Yeah.
Right.
Frank Vincent out.
That's one of my favorite moments of Stallone's in the entire movie, it's like how genuine, is he serious? Like, his eyes are so just like, oh oh, you want it so badly. I'm like, oh, buddy, I understand. I feel that.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
boy.
after this funeral is kind of when we move into the party and everything. Yeah, because, but we get another kind of scene with him and Figgy, where Figgy is now staying with Ray, he's staying in the police station for a bit, it seems like, and then he's staying at Ray's house.
Yeah, apparently in the director's cut, there's like an actual kind of connecting scene where like Freddy actually says to Figgis, like, oh, you don't have to sleep in the sheriff's office, you can always sleep over at my house kind of thing. But in the theatrical cut that we all watched for this podcast recording, that scene does not happen.
Yeah, it's just a lot of kind of random stuff happens in the theatrical cut.
Now I gotta see this director's cut. You got me curious now. I gotta find it.
Yeah, apparently he does fill out some of the relationships kind of a bit more, like the relationship between Freddy and Ray, the relationship between Figgis and Freddy, and yeah, just kind of rounds out some characters a bit more, from what I've heard.
Yeah, it definitely makes more sense, I guess, why Freddy would be more defensive of Ray in the beginning. From what I remember watching the director's cut. It's not a lot of stuff, but it makes a little bit more sense.
I mean, that part made sense to me. That like, you have a character like Freddy who, like, has clearly wanted to be a cop and, couldn't because of his injury. And like, so Ray is the guy that gave him the chance to do the thing. And like, and I get the psychology of Ray picking this guy who's like, oh, he's going to be a pushover. He couldn't be real police, so he'll be our police and he'll let us get away with everything. And Freddy, like, being grateful for the job and the chance to be this, like, that whole psychology I totally get. And, I wonder, it's what has me curious about this director's cut. It's like, oh, if they're going to plumb that more and get into that dynamic, like, that sounds fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. From what I remember, it helps kind of connect things a little and build the relationships. But besides that, it doesn't really change. There's nothing major that it really changes.
Okay.
Oh, actually, yeah, like, before we kind of cut to the party, this is apparently a scene that runs longer in the director's cut, is where, like, Mo, the head IA guy played by De Niro, he's questioning Freddy, and he says he gets to say the title of the movie, which is always fun. When anybody says the title of the movie, he just says, "Looks like you're the sheriff of Copland," and everybody goes like, "Ah!" He said the title of the movie.
Yeah. And he basically says the whole thing about Freddy not being a real cop. The same as that they're both, and they're in the eyes of these other police officers, they're not real cops.
They're both in law enforcement, but he's not a real cop.
Don't they also have like an origin story of how Mo came to be IA?
Ray makes one up,
oh, okay.
But he says the only way, how guys get into IA is they do something bad.
Right.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he kind of makes up two stories, because he says to Freddy, that like IA guys are like basically get caught with their fingers in the tiller, or so whatever, get caught doing something bad, and then are faced with a choice: go to jail, join us. And then earlier on, when Keitel and De Niro were having an act off, he kind of made it seem like he did it for a girl. And then, but De Niro kind of brushes that off and is like, is that how it goes? So, like, yeah, we assume that Ray's just bullshitting, the whole time.
Which, again, is such a fascinating thing in a modern context, because that's exactly what the, modern conservative mindset is like, well, the only way anyone would ever do that is insert contrivance here that's not based in reality or anything.
Which Mo actually says something. He's almost more generous with Ray, where he basically says Ray used to be a good cop. He used to be a nice guy, or he was a collar, or whatever, however he phrases it. He was an upstanding citizen, but something changed along the way. Kind of how it goes.
Yeah. But this is where we see that Murray very much not dead.
Yeah. And he's just partying. Everybody else knows he's not dead. He's
so this is essentially, he's essentially partying at his own weight.
Yeah. Oh, the dream.
But he very much is, he very much, it looks like he might die very soon, because Ray gets a phone call from a mysterious source that this movie doesn't bother to go further into. and then it's like, Murray's going to die now. But Rose overhears this, so she gives Murray a warning. But she doesn't feel confident enough in the company to whisper in his ear or anything, so writes it down on a napkin and gives him a drink with the napkin underneath it, which seems like there's like a 50-50 chance he sees that or not.
Right.
Yeah. And it's penned too with all the condensation, so there's
all the kind of, the whiskey running onto it and stuff like that. So
it's not the best plan.
Yeah,
as plans go, lucky for him, he does actually see it, but it could have gone either way. To be fair,
yeah.
And he happens to see it right in the bathroom where apparently they keep all their guns hanging too. Just.
Yeah, that didn't make sense to me. I was like, what?
Throw your coats in the bedroom, throw your guns in the bathroom, drinks are in the kitchen. All right, guys, let's go.
Time to party. Oh, dear.
And so after everyone leaves, he goes out to meet Ray, who is by their hot tub, I think. It looks like it's either above ground pool or hot tub or whatever it is. He walks out there and he's basically trying to suck up to Ray, saying, "Thank you so much for all you did here. You really made a great place." And then Jack and Leon, right? They come out and kind of surround him, and as he say, "Well, it's going to be all good." Then Jack says, "No, it's not." And then they start trying to drown him, which luckily he had that bathroom gun to start firing off randomly.
That's true.
That's his move. Firing a gun blindly. That's his superpower.
Yeah. I didn't even make that connection of that seems to be, he's incredibly reckless with a firearm. It's just spraying bullets wherever. But this does enough to scare off Ray and Jack and the other, I think it's Frank's his name.
Yeah,
Frank. Is the other corrupt cop. And then Joey rides up on the scene and, he's all very confused. And this is the kind of point where we're kind of supposed to kind of semi-side with Joey, because Joey's like, "Oh, I thought you were going to set him up with a new life." And Ray's like, you think, he says, "You think I'm all that, Joey," to kind of suggest that, his power only extends so far, that he can't just, be setting people up with new lives. Although he can be faking deaths and and calling off internal affairs investigations. So
with just a phone call.
Yeah.
Which could have been an interesting subversion, because I feel like that happens all the time in these movies. Is like, all right, well, we're going to have to create you a new persona, and you're just going to have to go live somewhere else and be a different person now. And here's the ready-made new persona package.
That's a fair point.
Hi, I watch entirely too many movies. This shit's easy, apparently. We can just toss off a social security card. Why not?
Yeah. So this movie makes the move of being like, it's not so easy. It's not so easy. It's easy to fake deaths. It's easy to get the heat off you because you're good friends with the mayor. But it's not so easy to create an entire new fake identity. Oh, the scene that happens before, there's a scene that happens before this that I think I should mention, because it's kind of it's a bit of a nothing scene, because the romance doesn't go anywhere. But just Stallone's performance of when Liz comes round to his house and she says, "Why did you never marry Freddy?" And the heartbroken kind of puppy doggish way he says, "Because all of the best girls were taken." Yeah. And then he's in tears and he just puts his head on her shoulders. It just, I don't know. I was genuinely touched by it. It was, one of the most genuinely touching moments of acting that Stallone has ever done.
And I agree. And I think we're going to spoil the movie anyways. I think what I always appreciate, I guess, about this movie is that it doesn't be one of those things once, Joey dies that he becomes like the, nuclear family element where he takes over the father role or the husband role. It kind of ends that they're never going to be together, especially when you see her reaction with him wanting to figure out Joey's death and her being like, just leave it, even for her own husband.
Yeah. That is a good point. Most other, this movie in, most other iterations of this movie would, absolutely have them, she's like, oh, I didn't know when I was, 17 or whatever the hell she's supposed to be. Then, I didn't know who you were or what I had or any of that stuff. But, now I do. Yeah, it's just, it never goes there at all. Yeah, good on you, movie.
Well, but kind of cutting back into where we were in the plot, let's Adam take this one, because I know this is one of your favorite scenes, Adam. It's the classic go to lunch scene.
Oh, that's what I said. I was like, I know that's actually from Glengarry Glen Ross, but when he was doing it, and he was doing it exactly as Kevin Spacey. Yeah. And Glengarry was just like, go to lunch. Will you go to lunch? And it was just like, wait a second. I had this weird moment of I thought I remembered that from a different movie. And it's like, wow, is James Mangold already quoting Glengarry Glen Ross? Good on you. But wow, okay.
There's some kind of Mama-esque stuff going on here.
I should not be tasked ever with recounting any amount of the plot.
Fair. Let me just say that now. Fair point. I love as well the guy that he shouts go to lunch to is an actor called Michael Gaston, who plays a relatively decent-sized role in the series The Mentalist, and has been in a bunch of other TV series, and is kind of one of those faces you'll definitely know. And I like how even nothing roles is faces you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will never get over the cast of this movie, because I was just watching it, just being like, holy fuck, that's and then having to IMDb them, it's
which I guess, it's kind of what, they're always, when you're developing something, it's we want to get the biggest name we can get for everything, and that's, I know that's the goal or the hope, and it's always kind of interesting when you watch a movie from the 60s or 70s, and you see, the young version of somebody that is, an older actor.
Yeah.
And we're showing, Annie Hall to people, some years back, and, one of the girls there was just like, holy crap, that's what Jeff Goldblum looked like when he was young?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, more and more it feels like that, these cop movies, because we've come up with a couple of them, I think even just for this podcast, it's they're almost the, I guess, whatever they would be now, Marvel or DC movies of today, where it's there's always that one movie where it's let's get all of the big names for just one epic crime thriller.
Yeah.
That is true. I suppose, because Pulp Fiction's like that, everybody's faces and other crime movies, things like Get Shorty, and then there was kind of a few movies like that, and then but also war films as well, because it was the year after you had Saving Private Ryan and The Thin Red Line, and both of them are just packed with faces, Terrence Malick is just incredibly, he does that all the time. He just packs his movies with all these big name actors, and then doesn't tell them that he's cut them out of the movie and stuff like that, and then they all come to premieres well, I'm sure I had a bigger role, I'm now in it for all of a minute.
Yeah, tells Adrian Brody he's the main character of the movie, and then he's in one scene or whatever.
Oh, Malick.
It's art!
Is that what Mangold and Malick have in common? Is that what they shout after?
And Cool Runnings.
And Cool Runnings. Oh, dude.
Hey, what happens next?
Well, actually, what happens next is we get one of the great lines of the movie where, Freddy has this confrontation with Jack, Robert Patrick's character, and he's kind of suggesting that he might have burnt down Figgis' house. And then Jack says, no, that is retribution. That I leave to God. I am Gandhi. And you're like, what now?
Internal consistency in your characters is fun.
Yeah, because this character's just been like this kind of knuckle dragging, like, yeah, Neanderthal type. You're just like, oh, this is weirdly eloquent for this character.
It is. It's so out of nowhere. I remember thinking that last night. Like, I may have even like rewound. Like, wait a second, was there something that prompted that? Yeah.
It's just for that one weird moment, he's suddenly all. But not long after that, we get another one of this movie's great lines where Ray Liotta describes the whole situation of the movie as a dark and deep motherfuck. It's a beautiful description.
But we do get the very major plot that is crucial within that scene where we're kind of hinted that maybe the fire was caused by Ray Liotta in itself, because, it's very crucial to the plot.
Yep. You know what else is crucial to the plot? That this whole town was funded by mob money.
Yeah.
Right! Right. Yeah. Again, where the hell did that come from? And
it just becomes a plot point at this point, and you're just like, oh, what now? Ray was given all the money to found this town by mobsters who are not in the film. Okay, interesting choice.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not going to talk about the script anymore.
That's
why if you're interested, leave us a review and we'll make the mini-series of Copland.
Where you see like the founding of Garrison, you see transaction, the mobsters are in the mini-series, there's a whole bunch of stuff. We dig deeper into Deputy Bill's racism that's not commented on. There's a whole thing, and we can even go to upstate New York and see what Cindy's doing. We've got a whole thing planned for this,
we do our whole pitch is just going to be Copland, but then we're going to cut in Starship Troopers. Would you like to know more?
Yeah. Yes, that is very much you've got it. You've got it, Adam. That's it.
Yep. Isn't that an interesting digression? Would you like to know more?
Yeah.
Give us 10 hours of time.
Do you know what I also love in this scene as well is, like, I love Ray Liotta in this film, but he goes on this rambling metaphor about going diagonal that I've watched this movie a few times. I still don't really understand where he goes with this. Like, you gotta go diagonal. The diagonal rule's more important than the golden rule. What's the golden rule again? Like, I need more information, Ray.
Listen, cocaine is a hell of a drug.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Is this where he starts spilling the beer can in the Copland?
That's when he starts spilling the beer can, and he goes more into the whole diagonal thing, and you need to steer diagonal, and like, I get lost. I'm like,
if the lights are all red, do you go through all the red lights, but then you're dealing with traffic, or do you turn? Yeah.
No, so you've watched this more than me, and you don't know what this metaphor is going for either. Okay.
I only know you don't take Broadway to get to Broadway. That's what he said.
Yeah, but that's just words. That's not a sentence. You just put a bunch of
Well, and you could extrapolate that. That's just scenes. That's not a script.
Yeah.
Oh no, I went and did the thing I said I wouldn't do again.
Oh, God damn it, Adam.
I'm gonna put myself in timeout. Sorry.
But every time I watch it, I always think about that beer too. And that's where I'm like, why are you just spilling you purposefully are spilling the beer on his porch?
It's art.
Yeah.
He's acting. It's a choice.
I think like the spilled beer is supposed to be some analogy for spilled blood or something. Like I really get lost in this scene. I don't know what. It's like Adam said, cocaine's a hell of a drug.
But it does go with the Stallone season where for some reason every single movie it's Stallone is like putting in a 5 or whatever, and then there's one actor or the whole cast, even with like Demolition Man, that are just up to 11. And that seems to be every Stallone movie.
But yeah, at least like Stallone's kind of dialed in performance makes sense in this one. It's the fact that he's going small is like makes sense, and it works well with other actors going big, like Robert Patrick, like Ray Liotta, like Harvey Keitel. Like it work. It's not like he's just looking bored or something like he has in some of the other movies we've covered. It is a genuinely like nuanced kind of low key performance, and it makes those it works well with those other kind of bigger performances coming at him.
Oh, definitely.
But this is where Freddy realizes that cocaine's a hell of a drug as well, because like he realizes at this point. I mean, it's been pretty obvious throughout the movie that Figgis is a cokehead, but like Freddy's a bit slow to catch on, and he sees some coke on the mirror, and he's like, "Oh, is my friend a cokehead?"
Yeah.
That you can almost read the thought on his across his eyes, kind of like, "Huh."
As everybody.
That's why he's like that.
So
Which
the
does
next
beg the question, like, if they're supposed to be best friends, has he just never, like, because none of them have any shame. The dead guy's walking around being like, "Hi, I'm not dead" to everybody.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
Has he really never, like, done coke around his friend before?
Yeah. Oh, so this is a moment in the movie that also really throws me off. Like I say, I've seen this movie a few times, and I remember it throwing me off the few times I've seen it, so not seen it in a while. After the rambling analogy about going diagonal, driving to Broadway, whatever, we get this like really harsh cut. We just cut to like crime happening. Yeah. And it seems like we're cutting into like a flashback, but then we're not cutting into a flashback. We're cutting into something that's happening now, where this super criminal, apparently, who is described over the radio as a monster, is fucked up one cop and is now beating up Joey. And this random rooftop criminal is played by Method Man. He is in the film for fucking less than a minute, but yes, Method Man needed to be in this role.
I will say, I don't think he's a full monster. I mean, he gives him the out. He says, just say you're done, or say you quit and you can go back to your babies and eat Fruit Loops.
I thought the implication was that he was a monster, that he had, in some way had like superhuman strength or something. Like he'd been given some sort of like super serum or something like that. Cause like the guy is like, his trouser is ripped, there's blood running down his leg, and then, like Joey's all fucked up and stuff. It's just like he's beat up these two cops, just just been throwing them about, so like again, this could be something that we cover in the Copland series that we've got planned, of like the superhuman origin story of Method Man's character and how he got his superpowers.
I really just thought he was like a suburban white person's idea of an urban black person.
Yeah.
Yeah, he pretty much is. Yeah.
Well, and that's what goes against. So in the beginning, we're kind of showing this very, sprinkled on element of race and these kind of racist cops and or systematic racism. And then like it goes to this scene that basically confirms or tries to confirm all of the elements that it's trying to deny in the beginning, of saying.
Well, I mean, this is kind of one of the weird things, because in many ways this is like a very liberal anti-cop movie, but at the same time, like the two guys who get shot in the car at the beginning of the movie and this character are just like, I mean, they're not like real people like some of the other people in the movie. They're just like characters from hood movies that were around in the 90s,
Yeah.
It's interesting. I just saw a movie the other day that I'm not going to name for a very obvious, for a reason that will become very obvious in a second, but like, cause I needed to kill some time and theaters are open. So I was like, okay, what's a horror movie that's starting now? And so I went into this thing and I think it's the first time I've ever had this thought about a movie, and if it's not, I'm just very good at striking them from memory. But I was like, this movie would be misogynist if it were smarter, but it's too stupid to actually be anything. And like Copland is not that. It's not a stupid movie whatsoever. No. It's just like so filled with ideas. And I just clicked over to like, okay, this was his second movie. What was his first? And it was heavy. It was about an overweight, sad chef who meets a woman and like rediscovers the spark of life.
Is that what it's about?
It's definitely about an overweight, sad chef, and I'm pretty sure, I think, Liv Tyler, they meet, and Pruitt Taylor Vance is like, oh, maybe life, is okay. But the idea that, this is Mangold's second film, and you look at, okay, the editor just did, Silence of the Lambs, and, it cut Reds and Philadelphia, and is clearly good at his job. You have Howard Shore doing the score, and you have this ridiculous cast, and you have you have all these people, and it goes back to the earlier thing of it was just Harvey was at his height, so it does feel like he just kind of he decided I want the best of everything, and it'll work out. The idea that the director's cut is 17 minutes longer or whatever it is. He was renowned for, you cut 10 minutes out of a movie, you cut 15 minutes out. Whether it needs it or not, every movie needs to be shorter to Harvey. And it does. It just kind of, you get that smell of man, this is a lot of, this is a lot of arrogance going into this. And James Mangold, I picture him just doing his best, to try to just keep it on, try to make what he was interested in making, when he wrote the script, and just kind of getting, overruled at every turn by but why would you not have so and so? And it's but it's taken from him in a Death by 1,000 Cuts.
Yeah.
And I am now just so curious to go back and read and do all the research that I'm sure you did, Scott, about this, because what the hell? It's such an interesting, it's not even a failure, but it's kind of a failure when you think about what it could have been.
Yeah, for sure.
So Joey is knocked off of a ledge, and he's kind of holding on to an antenna. He's about to fall, and Ray comes up, and he opens the door and sees him, but because Joey is kind of talking about, I guess, having a change of heart with everything that's happening with Superboy. And then, but I think more so it's because Joey was having an affair with Ray's wife, that he then shuts the door and then pretends that it's locked, and he's trying to pick the lock. And so all these cops are just waiting as you see Joey slowly, falling more and more. They finally break through, go up. But by the time they get up to the top, Joey's has fallen, 5 or 6 stories, and he's dead.
That's the end of Joey.
And that plot line, that was very important.
That affair plot line that was kind of set up and mentioned kind of a couple of times as this is something we should pay attention to. That sly, dirty look that Keitel gives Joey at Superboy's fake funeral, and that's it. That's him done. And then we after that we get Joey's funeral, and then at this stage, this is where Freddy awakens from his slumber. He's not taking this shit anymore, and he goes to visit Ray at the bar. Now, this must be confusing for you, Craig, who's seen the director's cut.
Yes.
Because, so in this cut, the theatrical cut, this scene where Freddy confronts Ray happens about an hour and 8 minutes into the movie. The scene where Freddy goes to confront Ray at the bar in the director's cut happens about an hour and 23 minutes into the film, after Freddy has already picked up Murray. Because Murray is kind of we've briefly seen Murray, as aka Superboy, turn up at Freddy's house, but he runs away because he sees Figgis. And, but so at this stage, Freddy does not have Murray. But in the director's cut, he does, and this is where he confronts him. Yeah, so, and this must be very confusing for you.
It was, because it feels, at least for me watching it, because I can't remember, besides this time right now, watching the theatrical cut, that it feels like the tone completely shifts, or the momentum, because by the time he's confronting Ray, you have that, and then you instantly get into that final, stretch right afterwards from how I viewed it. But watching it this time, it's kind of he has this conversation, but then a bunch of other stuff still has to kind of happen before they get to that point. Yeah, it's just tonally, and it feels weird.
Yeah, and then, so there's a moment as well, because this feels like Stallone's kind of hero moment. So there is a moment where Ray says, "Who the fuck do you think you are?" Now, in the director's cut, does he say, "I am the sheriff"? Because it feels like that's what it's kind of setting up for. But then it just like zooms into his face, he does like a kind of growly face, and then we cut to him coming up the stairs of the New York subway.
Yeah, he says, I am the sheriff, when I remember, and yeah, I don't know. Again, it works better, even with the ending. I know there's an extra scene in the theatrical cut, from what I remember. It's like a little tag scene at the end, but okay. Yeah, I think it works.
You think it works better in the director's cut? I suppose like he has more leverage because he actually, so as I understand it, in the director's cut, he has Murray, he explicitly tells Ray that he is taking Murray to the IA offices at 6 o'clock in the morning because, let's remember, this is a Western. And, so that's how it kind of works in the director's cut.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Well, let's talk about the version that doesn't.
I mean, like, it still works as a scene, like, it's still like, again, as, it's another one of the movie's act-offs and, like Ray's little speech about like why they created this town, and obviously it's tinged with heavy racism of like, it's safer here, us, all the white folk together kind of thing. It's good speech, and like when he's dressing Freddy down and he's saying he's not thinking, that his plan is that of a boy, it's still a good scene. I mean, I can see how it works better in the director's cut, but it's still a decent scene.
And what I never get to is that in that scene, when he's being when they're confronting each other, you see Janine Garofalo just in the back, like hanging out with all of the not the bad cop, the bad cop, like she's just kind of there.
Yeah.
But throughout everything we've witnessed prior, she has really no reason to want to associate with them. But,
because in all the scenes that we've seen her interact with them, she has been patronized and given sexist remarks put towards her way.
Yeah, that little thing.
Yeah, so it seems. But then after that, we like, again, this film, and it's like just stuffing, itself with every actor, we find out that Edie Falco's character is part of the bomb squad that becomes sort of important to the plot. But again, like hardly any lines in the movie. She's in it for 2 scenes, but yeah, we needed Edie Falco for this. And Freddy goes to visit Mo in his internal affairs offices. But Mo is not best impressed, is he not, Adam?
No, he is not. He almost looks annoyed.
he cares more that the deli forgot the napkins.
I do love those little moments of like business for the actors are just like, I mean, it's such a like Law and Order thing of just like, oh yeah, we can't just talk about like the dead body or, the crime that's happening or what the actual point of the scene. There always has to be this like little like, but like, what about, deal with this? The napkins. Why don't they give us napkins? It's such a wonderful little just like business for the actor. It's very strange to me, but kind of a delight sometimes.
I love the nonchalance of De Niro in this scene. Like when Freddy is giving this kind of heartfelt plea of like, like you came and you gave me this big speech about, what to do and, to be a cop, to be a real cop and all that. And like De Niro just goes like, yeah, that was like 2 weeks ago.
It really is. He's so just like, oh man, I don't even remember that. That was, so much happens in 2 weeks.
It's just like, oh yeah, that all that morality and all that kind of big pep talk. It was like, yeah, I mean, a fortnight's a long time, I'm over it now, basically, Corruption does what corruption does. Fuck him.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is the NYPD, so he probably does have other corruption going on. But
that's true.
It's like, remind me which one this is. Oh, it's the guy that's not dead. Right.
That is true. But it's like just his responses to everything, because Freddy's like just trying to convince him, being like, no, but what about the death of Joey Rondon? Fuck Joey Rondon. But what about Ray? Yeah, fuck Ray. At this stage, he just doesn't give a shit, or he appears not to give a shit in front of Freddy anyway.
To get him to actually do something, because he's just using him to make a mess so he can get kind of what he wants. So he's not even that good of a cop either.
Yeah. None of these guys. Okay, again, it is a movie about like how all cops are bad, but from a perspective of like, yeah, but we need them. You know, it's very much that like, you know, well, you want to defund the police until you have to call them for, you know, for help. And it's like, none of us are advocating no laws or no law enforcement. We just want them to like be better at what it says on the car. We want them to actually protect and serve, and not just like think it's funny. You know, yeah, it is. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Again, would you like to know more? Let's make a show.
Would you like to know more? Backstories and everyone. Oh, I love this plot contrivance as well. Like, after Freddy kind of storms out, you know, it's, I keep making points about these movies, about this movie, about all its kind of deficiencies. I should point out that, I like the movie, Craig likes the movie. Yeah. I think you kind of like the movie too, Adam.
I do.
Yeah, we all like the movie. It just like, you know, it just does have these deficiencies. I think we're kind of being hard on it because I think this is a very good film that could have been a masterpiece, but it's not because of the deficiencies we are talking about.
Well, and I know the episode will be next week for the people listening, but talking about the Ronin one, we had the same issue where like the movie, just watching it as a viewer, fun and it's good, but then going in it for the sake of this podcast where you're kind of going scene by scene and really analyzing it, you're like, well, here are the issues.
It's also just not like it's not a fun movie. It's a hard movie to celebrate, you know, and your point, Scott, just reminded me of like, yeah, we had a review like not too long ago where, of A Ghost Waits, where somebody was like, all they did was talk about what they didn't like about it, and then in the end it was like 3 of 5. I'm like, wait a second, like I thought you hated this thing, and then, you know, it's like, but it's so easy. I think it's easier to like kind of focus on like, oh, I wanted, you know, like I wanted it to be better. It could have been better. There's evidence that it could have been better, but this is what happened, you know, and and especially with one like this that's, you know, slightly dour, you know, it's just a hard movie to celebrate because, and I mean, there's this great cast, but like none of them, like, or not none of them, but like very few of them get like really fun moments where you're just like, oh, Harvey Keitel being a badass Harvey Keitel, or, you know, like that kind of stuff. Like, and it's not to say that there aren't good moments, you know, or good character beats, but it's just like, there's never that just like, that's what I'm here for. Yeah.
I know what you mean. I think like in terms of that, there is a couple of moments that a couple of the actors get. I think in terms of like, something to really sink their teeth into, just like Keitel gets Ray's kind of monologue in the bar, which he really shows off that he's the boss. And, you know, like Liotta gets his weird fucking diagonal metaphor and just really goes at that. And he gets
Liotta is great this entire movie.
Liotta gets like
the best thing in this movie.
Liotta gets he gets the most fun moments of anyone.
They didn't send him napkins for the scene, but he eats it anyway.
Yeah.
I'll give this Liotta. Well, I don't know about Liotta now, but he shows up for the paycheck every time. That's funny because like when we were talking about him before, I was like, oh yeah, like what is he doing these days? Like, is he on a CBS show or something? I haven't seen him in forever. You know, but
I have to check it out
dude,
after we
comes to play.
He definitely does. He definitely does. But yes, I was going to mention, before we went off on yet another tangent, I was going to mention, one of my favorite plot contrivances in the movie where, like, Freddy just so happens to walk past very convenient files just lying around about the case, about, like, profiles on everybody in the town, you know, Ray and, all the other characters, basically.
And he takes the most crucial, apparently the most crucial ones are right on top out of all of these stacks of files.
Yes, the most important ones are just right there in the most plain sight, you know. But this seems like this would be like a rallying point in the movie where Freddy really becomes the hero and everybody gets behind him, and then but nobody really gets behind him. Like the deputies don't really want anything to do with it. Deputy Bill's a bit like, well, I don't really want to do police work, and Deputy Cindy is very much like, you know what, I've seen the corruption in this town, I don't like it, but I don't want to join your fight against it because it's just going to be too much paperwork for me, so I want to get transferred back to upstate New York where apparently nothing happens and I was very happy with my life. And I don't know why I transferred here in the first place. Should have been added.
Cindy very much does not want to know more.
No.
Well, then we get the whole bit with Liz, too, where you think, I mean, again, when we talked about this would be a normal moment where they'd finally talk about their love for one another, but no, it's like they're at dinner, and she's just kind of scolding him and telling him to stop putting his nose where it doesn't belong, and that she doesn't care, again, why Joey died. It doesn't matter. The only one that cares about opening all this up is him.
Yeah. And slightly before that, we get a random scene at the fair. This just seems to be a bit of foreshadowing that, you know, Freddy might seem a bit slow-witted and might be a bit of a rubbish cop, but he's actually really a sharpshooter.
Which is such an interesting comment. Like, oh, I know he's not like, you know, quick on the uptake and all this stuff, but he can shoot. He can shoot things. Like, is that what we want him doing? Is that the highest calling? Yeah. What an interesting thought. Or idea.
Oh, where did he learn to shoot like that? Do you want to know more?
I learned it from watching you, Dad.
Well, I mean, so as much as I think that final showdown, the shootout, is great, I think, you know, with...
Oh, yeah. I mean, classic Western stuff. That. Yeah.
And we'll get into it more, but there is that point where, based on everything up until this moment and kind of how the movie is trying to be, I don't know, it feels like it should have ended without it. I don't know, in a smarter way. But ending it with the violence, again, is one of those things that then goes against the whole kind of notion it's trying to create in the opening. In a way, I don't know. It's hard to explain.
It's true. Although, Mangold clearly envisioned this as a Western, so, it makes sense in terms of Mangold's vision of this movie, that it would end in a shootout.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is the whole, firing the gun right next to his good ear so that it takes place in that, muffled, or muted kind of, it is a good idea.
And but we do have to discuss just a couple more things before we get to that shootout, including we wrap up, the great mystery of whether Figgis' house was burnt down by Jack or it was burnt down by Figgis for the insurance money, and it turns out it was burned down by Figgis. Because, when Deputy Cindy quits, and she kind of suggests that, Figgis probably burnt it down for the insurance money. Yeah, I think you're supposed to, as an audience member, being like, of course he didn't. Jack definitely did it. And then you're like, oh no, he did, right, okay. No, he did do that. He did do that. And it just kind of drops in of he's got a check for $198,000. Oh, he definitely did it for the insurance money. Fair enough.
Oh, his burning it down led to the murder of his wife. But yet Freddy doesn't really acknowledge that part. It's, it's
that whole, you didn't know Monica was in there, right? I mean, you're just committing arson and insurance fraud, not murder, right?
That steps over a line in terms of the friendship. I can be friends with somebody who committed insurance fraud and arson, but I can't be a friend with somebody who committed insurance fraud, arson, and premeditated murder.
That's just too far, man.
But Figgy leaves, and then we get his great line where he's yelling at himself in the mirror.
Oh man, that's so good. Where he's just staring at himself in the rear view mirror, and he's just like, stop it, stop.
I really like that. Just like stopping on the highway, like, I guess I gotta turn around. It's not a highway, but yeah.
And I love how they film it with just him staring at himself and they're staring back at himself from the rearview mirror, as if his consciousness was his conscience was like a separate character.
Yeah.
Like, fuck you, making me feel things, and I have to have some sort of moral code. Okay, I'm gonna turn the car around.
Nobody makes me feel my own feels.
But during that time, too, Freddy is able to find out where Superboy is at, thanks to talking to his aunt, because he said he's basically the only one that can save him to her. That's the only way she's convinced.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the last time Kathy Moriarty's in the movie.
Yeah. No, she's in a screaming at the end. That's it, holding a dog.
Oh yes, right. No, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. She is. But she doesn't. Right. Yep. No. Moving on.
Yeah, and Superboy is in the water tower with a bunch of cans of
Campbell's soup.
Yeah, and that's where he's been hanging out. Which makes even more sense why he would then confront Ray after that fact. Because you watch Cindy, it's basically he gets him, you watch Cindy leave, and then for Freddy to then come in, you see Cindy in the background. Like she's left and she's just having a drink before whatever. Yeah. And then, yeah, it makes a lot more sense that having the final kind of confrontation.
Fair enough. I can see that. I can see how the director's cut probably fills in a few gaps of what we've been kind of talking about in terms of characters, filling in more gaps of character relationships. And I feel like reading about the director's cut and where this scene is placed in the movie, I think probably does make a little bit more sense. The fact he's already got Murray, and then he lays it on Ray that's his plan to take him in the morning. So yeah. Although again, it still kind of doesn't make sense that Freddy knows how corrupt Ray is to tell him. But anyway, moving on from that.
And then we get racist, useless Bill.
It was like he suddenly remembered his pregnant wife that we've never heard about before. My wife, she's just found out she's pregnant, I think. Yeah, definitely. That's a true story. I'd love to help, but,
my wife that I definitely have, isn't it?
Yeah.
You wouldn't know her. She's in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, in our mini-series, in our Copland mini-series, we definitely have an episode on what a shithead Deputy Bill is. Just a cowardly
it's the show
racist
that nobody is clamoring for. We have to do this.
Just us? You want to know more? Anyway, Craig, how are we going?
Okay, so it becomes morning. He loads up his shotgun. He's taking Murray, or Superboy, out to the car, and then instantly Jack and Frank come up and they basically take Superboy, throw him into a car, and Frank says, "Don't worry, Freddy is not going to kill you." And then
he says, "Don't shoot yourself. Freddy's not going to. Jack's not going to kill you."
And then Jack asks which is his good ear, and then fires the pistol right next to it, and they drive off back up to Ray's house. As we get, one of those essential Stallone yells that he does. And it's going to lead to the best scene in the whole movie. And I mean, overall, yeah, as we've talked about throughout, it's a very good kind of Western-like showdown.
Yeah. So, it is. It's really well shot, and it's just, it's this kind of disorientating scene because you're supposed to feel what Freddy's feeling. So basically, the soundtrack is now, there's not a score. There's just the sound of tinnitus, basically. And it's just really well done. And, Freddy, has a shootout with Jack and Frank. He shoots Frank, and we think Frank's dead. And then he shoots Jack, and Jack is dead. And then Frank is not dead, and he tries to, sneak up and kill Freddy. But Freddy, as we've established all of 10 minutes ago, Freddy's a real sharpshooter, so he manages to shoot Frank. And then
isn't it Figgis or who?
No,
somebody or he shoots. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, no. So Ray appears at the window and is about to. It seems like he's about to shoot out the window, and then Figgis shoots the window, or maybe Figgis does shoot Frank and then shoots at the window.
The other guy, or Leon, which one? Somebody else shoots Freddy in the arm after the first two are killed.
That's right. I'm pretty sure that he kills the first two, and then but like Freddy gets shot in the shoulder, and then Figgis comes back on the scene because he's suddenly gained the conscious, and and then they follow Ray upstairs. Yeah, I think it's Leo. Leo.
Yep.
Is who shoots Freddy in the shoulder, and Figgis kills and saves Freddy from. I think that's because Freddy kills Frank because he turns around and shoots him through the car window before Frank can kill him through the other car window.
And then
this is very important, Adam, to get the geography of this.
Mangold, it's a good shows. He shows Freddy kind of spot him in the rearview mirror and say what he it's well done. It's just funny to hear recounted. Yeah. I don't know why. I just laughed.
It is kind of funny to hear it actually. This is riveting podcasting. I'm sure, or I hope it is. Oh man, if you've made it to this part of the episode, well done.
It's Craig was saying he shoots out the window, and I knew that Ray is going to shoot out the window, but then then Figgis actually shoots out the window in a different sense of shooting the window and breaking the glass. But it was just I just watched us kind of hit upon wait, does that not mean what I think it means? It does. What am I saying? And it was very funny to me.
You don't go on Broadway to drive to Broadway, it's just, I
want to know more.
So Freddy follows him in, and he's going up the stairs, and he comes in, and that's where he sees Superboy escaping again. And that's where, she's with the dog on her bed.
Yeah,
And Ray is about to shoot him and kill him, but Figgis fires
and misses.
And misses, but that gives, because he can hear it very slightly, Freddy's able to turn around and shoot Ray.
And then Ray mutters something, but Freddy says, "I can't hear you, Ray."
Yep.
It's art.
Which was
after every cut.
Yeah.
I will never be able to watch this film again without the end of every scene just being jumping out my chair, but it's art.
Yeah.
I can't hear you, Ray.
Yeah.
Get it? It's a metaphor. You don't have any sway here anymore. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Now I want Gene Gruffalo to come back at the end of the movie, just see, it was within you all along. Yeah. Now I can be here.
That's if you actually stop people being patronizing sexist assholes towards me.
Oh, we couldn't get them to grow as people, so we shot them, and now it's better.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Well, and I like to...
I'd love if Cindy just came back into this scene and just been like, oh, this is going to be so much paperwork. This is the exact reason I'm going back upstate.
This shit doesn't happen in Montauk.
And I like how it becomes this thing, especially as we get to the end, where he takes them into the IA because that's going to now solve everything and finally bring all these men to justice. And I keep always thinking to myself but he killed all of them. What point does it matter? It doesn't matter.
Like, does this end with him going to jail? Yeah. What happened to all those guys? Oh, I killed all them. Yeah, that's not a problem. Oh, what? Is that wrong now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, he cleaned up the town frontier style. This is a Western, so, like, it flies. Yeah. It's like, it's okay. Just works on those rules. He is the sheriff of the town, sheriff rules, and, he cleaned it up. And by murdering everyone.
And all those New York cops, as he's bringing Superboy in, are just, like, right up on him. They are not giving personal space.
I know. Like, I'm like watching that, I was like, is this supposed to be like they're all like mad at him?
Yes, I think that's what it's supposed to be. They're all like baying for his blood. They're all like they don't want him to bring in Superboy, but
then none of them actually do anything.
Yeah,
no, they just kind of paw at him and just kind of cajole him a bit, kind of push him around a bit, but like they don't. There's no like punches thrown. Yeah,
yeah. It is a scene when you're watching it that you feel like somebody's going to get shot.
Yeah.
Or something, but then nothing happens.
Yeah, they just, like, come at him in a really kind of hissy, passive-aggressive way. It's just kind of like, this feels kind of odd, but, okay. And then, like you say, like, talking about the differences from the director's cut. So, the movie does kind of end weird in that we get this other narration from Mo. So we're like, oh, we're kind of closing how we opened, so, and then once Mo's narration ends, you're like, well, end credits will appear, but then end credits don't appear. We just get like these wandering shots of the New York skyline.
Yeah.
And that kind of go on, and you're like, okay, so we're getting we're now signifying we're definitely getting another scene because we're not just going to end with these wandering shots, are we? And then we do get another scene that just feels real tacked on of just being like, Freddy is just looking out, over the river, across the George Washington Bridge and just plaintively, and then Deputy Bill, who I don't know, I think we're supposed to kind of like for some reason, even though he's been just a cowardly racist asshole the whole movie, but, the friendly relationship he's always had with Deputy Bill. Deputy Bill calls for him and he's like, you alright? And it's like, yeah, I'm alright. And then, they drive away, Freddy and Deputy Bill, to solve more crime, I suppose. Catch some of those speedsters again.
And that was because that's the first time I've seen that part. Because every time I've watched it always ends, it works well, like at this book ending. Because you get the narration and then it just goes. And it fits.
Oh, okay. So it does end in the natural, logical point where it should end.
It doesn't have that kind of whatever scene where Bill comes up and says a car got T-boned and we need to go get it. I don't know. Go check it out. Whatever.
Hey,
for the continuing adventures of Deputy Bill and Sheriff Fred.
Hey, thanks for taking care of all that corruption and killing all those people. Want to come with me? There's a car accident. Doop de doop. Sure, a cop's work is never done.
Oh, and that's it. We've covered it. We've done it.
We did it. Oh my God.
That is the end of Copland. Do either of you have any final thoughts before we go out?
No.
Cool. Craig? We're running long, so we got to keep it short. So it's either a no or a...
it's would anybody like to know more?
Exactly. So before
episode's gonna have footnotes.
Yes. Oh dear, yeah. Check the show notes for all the references and footnotes and other documentation that was made.
All the thoughts we couldn't fit into 150 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes. So before we really do finish this episode, do you want to give any quick plugs or tell people where you're at on the internet, Adam?
Sure. Yeah. Unless this is like a totally new audience, I'm on Twitter at Adam Stovall, ADAMSTOVALL, on Instagram at not Adam S. And the movie, our movie A Ghost Waits, is available on VOD. It is available. There's a special edition Blu-ray that Arrow put out that you can buy wherever you buy Arrow Blu-rays. And I look forward to telling you about more stuff soon that I'm working on, but isn't really at a place where it can be talked about yet. Yeah.
And Craig, do you want any last words? Just tell people where you're at as well.
Like normal, you can find me at Craig Dram, DRAHEIM, on Twitter, or Instagram, or really any of those places. And yeah, besides that, nothing new, just doing the podcast and going to talk about Kurt Russell next.
Yeah.
There we go.
Kurt Russell coming up next. So yes, you can hit us up on Twitter at 90s_all. If you have enjoyed this episode or any of our episodes, then please do rate, review, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you do review the show, please remember to give the show 5 stars, because anything less than that means the algorithm thinks that we are terrible. So, if it's 4 stars, you can stick it up your ass, because it's 5 stars or nothing, That's it. I'm sorry. That's the way these algorithms work. But anyway, that's all for this time. Please be sure to join us next time when we will be doing the bonus episode for this. We will be doing 2 bonus episodes, because we will be doing a much, much shorter episode where we will be giving our end of season awards. And then next week, we will have our episode on Ronin. And then in 4 weeks time after that, we will be starting our Kurt Russell season. But this episode definitely now has to end. So until next time, see ya.
One more.